Have you ever wondered why so many people kind of quit alcohol but they struggle to stay sober? And the answer for this question is that they focus on the wrong questions. The question of, the question of how to quit alcohol is about focusing on the absence of alcohol. But the question of how to stay sober is about creating a consciousness of sobriety. And sobriety is a state of consciousness fundamentally. And also, addiction is a state of consciousness, and drinking is just an extension of this state of consciousness. Usually, we struggle when we try to quit alcohol, and the only thing that we try to change is our behavior. But we don't try to change ourselves or our lifestyles. And do you want to know the best thing of this? The secret of staying sober is that it's a skill. More specifically, it's a skill set. Staying sober isn't about surviving in your sobriety, but it's about developing a series of different skills that will help you to get out of the consciousness of addiction. And in the absence of the consciousness of addiction, sobriety arises naturally. No willpower needed. So stay tuned because what I'm about to share in this video could change everything in your sobriety journey. So I will walk you through these different skills that you need in order to create the consciousness of sobriety. So for that, I need my whiteboard. So let's go there. So before going to these skills, I want to note out a couple basic principles of this process. So the goal of staying sober is not the absence of alcohol, but it's about creating the consciousness of sobriety. And the nature of this process is not about trying to survive in your sobriety, but it's about creating natural sobriety where you don't have to use a lot of willpower to be sober. So the first skill of this process is to develop your own inner codes. Do you know that one of the main drivers of addictive behaviors is the loud inner critic? Usually people who have some kind of addictions have a very loud inner critic, and they talk themselves in a way that they are very judgmental and harsh for themselves. And I think it's very common thing for humans that we talk in ourselves in a way that we would never talk to our fellow humans or our best friends. And the outcome of talking ourselves in a very negative way is the emotions of guilt and shame, and those are the emotions what are one of the main drivers of addictive behaviors. So the goal of being your inner coach is to becoming your own best friend. And it's about being your own biggest support partner and your own biggest fan. You are always in your own corner and you are cheering yourself up. Because one of the things in this addiction work is that addiction is emotional phenomenon. And we have to be really smart with our emotions if we want to outsmart addiction. And if we are harsh or judgmental for ourselves, then it's not really smart way to use our emotions, because those things create very negative emotions. So what it means to be your own inner coach? It's about changing your inner dialogue, being very kind for yourself, creating a lot of understanding for yourself. Maybe you have to create understanding for your addiction, and maybe when you do mistakes you have to be very kind and creating a lot of understanding in those situations. And then you start to create more positive emotions in your life when you remove these judgments and things like that. And when you create more positive emotions, you have more space to be sober, and the sobriety starts to be more natural outcome. So the next skill is the skill of sacrifice, and this is very fundamental to do when we want to stay sober. That there is things in our lives that supports addiction, and it means that we have to remove these things. So it can means that you have to remove maybe some relationships in your life. It can be some unhealthy habits that supports your addiction, so then we have to remove those things. It can mean that maybe we have to stop going some places that that activates the cravings for alcohol. It's just about identifying what things in your life supports addiction and then sacrificing those things. So yes, that's the skill of sacrifice. Then the next skill is healthy dopamine channels. And this is very fundamental to learn after we quit alcohol. When we used to drink, usually we have very unhealthy dopamine channels. Our dopamine channels are instant gratifications. It's alcohol, it can be sugar, and things like that. And the goal of healthy dopamine channels is that you learn to get your dopamine and joy from your life. You go after your goals, you go after your vision, you start to exercise, and maybe you start new things, you make new friendships, and you start to get joy from the life and not trying to artificially create joy by drinking alcohol or doing some other activities like eating sugar or drugs or things like that. And this is very fundamental learn after we quit alcohol, and it will help a lot in your life, and it will help a lot in your sobriety. And it's a very important skill to learn after we quit alcohol. So the next skill is learning to identify what is the real problem in your life, or more specifically in your drinking problem, because alcohol is usually just a symptom of the real problem, but the alcohol itself is not the real problem. And I think this will make the biggest difference if you want to get out of the state of consciousness of addiction. So it's really about identifying where this need for drinking comes from. And first thing what you can do is to understand your drinking profile. So there is different drinking profiles, and people usually drink different reasons. Some people can drink because they are stressful drinker. Some people can drink because they are social drinker. Some people can drink because they are the weekend drinker. And some people can drink because they have alcohol addiction. And even Einstein said that if he would have an hour to solve a problem, he would use 55 minutes to think about problem and 5 minutes to think about a solution. When you really identify the problem, it's not that hard to solve anymore. And if you want to know more about this process, I made a video about this, and it gives you a clear roadmap how you can do this identification process. So I can put link in the description about that video. So the next skill is learning to build systems in your life that solves your problems. So this is maybe an extension of this identifying process, but when you learn to identify the problems in your life, then it's all about learning to build systems in your life that solves those problems. And this is very simple thing to do. It's not complicated if you really do the identification process very carefully, then it's very easy to build systems for your problems. You know, I have very simple formula to solve my own problems in my own life, which is basically that I first identify the problem very, very clearly. What is the deep problem? And then I start to read books about the topic of the problem. And then I start to do things that those books say to do. And I start to practice the principles of these books. And that's how I basically been, solving my problems in the last 5 years. And it really works. So there's many ways how you can build systems in your life to solve your problems. This was just one example, but test different things and then just start to do things that fits in your lifestyle. So the next skill is learning to face stress and hardships without numbing your pain. So just think about what are the moments when you usually drink. Are you full of happiness or joy or excitement in those moments? And I can guess that you are not in those states, but usually you feel stress, anxiety, or you're facing some kind of life challenge. And then usually those things leads to drinking. So if you want to stay sober, it's really important to learn to face your stress and other hard emotions without numbing your pain. And maybe tip for this is that learn to just sit with your emotions. And maybe you can create new rituals when you face stress, and maybe you can go exercise or see a friend or have a meal with nice company. Something like that. But learn to sit with your emotions and create new rituals when you face stress. That's how you can create the skill of learning to face stress and hardships in your life without numbing your pain. So the next skill is learn to outsmart your alcohol cravings. So usually you have certain moments when your alcohol cravings comes. For example, if you have been used to drink on the weekends, then maybe you start to always crave alcohol when it's weekend. So in this case, we can't really remove the trigger because the weekend will always be there. So the thing is that you have to outsmart these cravings. So next time when it's weekend, create new rituals on your weekends. Then in the future, you're not going to crave any more alcohol, but you're going to crave, for example, exercising or having a meal with nice company, and that's how you can outsmart your alcohol cravings. And this is one of the reasons why I haven't been craving alcohol for over 4 years. Simply because I have better cravings nowadays. I don't crave alcohol, but I crave exercising and reading. So it's a game of having better cravings. And when you build these 7 different skills, and when you master these 7 different skills, you will create a state of sobriety, or more specifically, the consciousness of sobriety. And I want to give you a couple bonus tips. First, I would say that learn to face your emotions. Addiction is an emotional phenomenon, and we can't try to outsmart addiction by logic, but we have to learn to use our emotions, and we have to master our emotions if we really want to overcome this problem. So no matter are emotions negative or positive, but learn to sit and face your emotions. And the second thing is that when you quit alcohol, I would say that start to design your life in a new way and create some kind of new vision for your life. That can be really beneficial, because if you still do the same things that you did when you drink, but now you don't drink, then everything that you do will basically remind you about drinking. But when you start to change your life also and your behaviors, then you start to get a better reminders in your life, and you start to create better emotions in your life. You don't anymore remember the old life, the life of alcoholism maybe, but you have the new vision and new emotions. So, concluding this video, staying sober isn't about the absence of alcohol, but it's about creating a consciousness of sobriety. And the consciousness of sobriety is developed by developing a series of different skills. So, thank you for watching this video, and bye bye.